Our matey, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Okay, I'll drop the act. But I think the point that I'm trying to make still stands. We are having pirates appearing in middle of Europe suddenly. So Viktor Orban's Hungary right now is engulfed in a big crisis for him. It's an elections that he's potentially projected to lose. And this unfortunately causes him to find some kind of a scapegoat, someone that he can create a big bad boogeyman off of, because there is not a lot of internal things that he can focus on and come out in beneficial lights. That's why he's now using Ukraine as a scapegoat. And what he did recently truly is baffling the mind, because what is presented to us here is nothing else than just modern day piracy. To put it in simple terms, Ukrainian National Bank or Shadbank has been transporting some gold and large sums of money. We're talking over 80 million of US dollars by the means of armored vehicles from Austria on their way to Ukraine. And in the middle of Austria and Ukraine is, well, Hungary. A perfectly legal transfer of funds between Raiffeisen Bank in Austria to Ukraine's head office, where the Austrian Bank head office is located. Yet police in Hungary was instructed to detain the people that were conducting this operation and all of the, well, I can say booty, just so they can parade it around and show everyone, just look how much loot have we gathered. Now, obviously, this is an absurd situation to happen, just seizing other countries' assets for absolutely no reason. There is absolutely no legal basis for it whatsoever. And as I say, Hungary at first was in a little bit of hot waters. I mean, they still are, but at least they are now released the workers of Ukrainian bank back to Ukraine. So at least it's not kidnapping charges that are being discussed here anymore. In any case, this is still a big issue for us in Europe. Hungary has produced some ultimatums to Ukraine about it. We know that right now it's a big talking point in Orban's pre-election campaign to put a lot of blame on Ukraine, as he needs to, as I say, have this boogeyman, someone that he can push the problems of the country to. Orban is stating that Ukraine is not repairing the Druzhba pipeline so he can get the access back to the cheap Russian gas that he got the whole country addicted to. The problem obviously here is that this Druzhba pipeline in Ukraine was bombed by Russia. It's not that Ukraine just turned off the supply of that cheap Russian gas to Hungary, despite the fact that maybe they really wanted to. And we actually know that Ukraine actually bombed some of the parts of the Druzhba pipeline inside of Russia. But this specific task over here is Russia bombing the pipeline themselves. So even if you want to kind of say anything to Ukraine, it's a question, why would they do this? I want to make sure that we understand correctly what Hungary is stating here, because some people interpreted this as Hungary is gonna do some kind of hostile actions towards Ukraine, implying that this is gonna be some physical action, use of force. This is not what has been said with this ultimatum. What was implied is that there will be actions taken within the European law agencies. Essentially, Hungary will sue Ukraine. This is a lot different than Hungary will use force against Ukraine. So hold your horses there, cowboy. Hungary doesn't need a war. Hungary doesn't need any military action. It just needs a boogeyman to blame all the problems of the country on. And Ukraine, unfortunately, is that for Orban. But given the point, let's talk a little bit about the Hungarian elections, because this is what matters the most. I'm going to move myself a little bit so we can see the numbers. Because right now, Hungary's Orban is in a little bit of pickle. You see the two main lines here. One is TISA, the second one is Fidesz. Fidesz is the Orban's party, the orange one. The dark blue one is TISA. This is the opposition party. Now, opposition party is very mixed. They have very varying opinions. Some say they want to support Ukraine. Some say they don't want to support Ukraine. But generally speaking, they are better than Orban, at least for now. And we had some interesting things happening recently. Firstly, if you look downwards, you will see that, for example, here at the bottom, like the most bottom lines, those are opposition parties to Orban, and they actually dropped out of elections. They stated that they need to consolidate opposition because this is, as they see it, the best chance to actually topple Orban's government. But more importantly, I want you to look at the green line, which says MH6. MH6%, that is the actually super far-right party. That is even more far-right than Orban's is. So, unfortunately, when you look at it and you see that it's Fidesz 39%, MH 6%, MH is 6%, so it's 45% because it is quite possible they would be in coalition together. Therefore, while at first glance it might look that it's no chance for Orban to win whatsoever, it is also important to understand that Orban has been at this game for a while now, and there is a lot of power consolidated in his hands, and he is utilizing a lot of that power to influence the elections. Right now, I would argue he is able to fake maybe 10 to 13% of votes. That is a lot of votes. So TISA would really need to try very hard to actually overcome this ability of Orban to fake the elections. The power of Orban right now is very strong, and it's annoying me very much that right now we don't have a lot of counter push to Orban. Everyone is basically looking down these elections and really just hoping for the best. We heard the statements from the European Union's president, Ursula von der Leyen, that stated that would be nice if Ukraine would renew the supply of gas by the Druzhba pipeline as soon as possible. So literally asking Ukraine can you just let us buy even more Russian stuff? And that is obviously not a nice thing to say, yet it came out of the mouth of the European Commission president. So in this sense, we need to understand that right now everyone is just hoping for the best, and I am still a bit pessimistic on the outcome, that this is as one-sided as everyone expects it to be. Then in-your-face kind of situation with full of irony, we have a situation around the Gulf states and United States with regards to cheap Shahed-type drones that are being used by Iran. Suddenly, United States and allies and everyone else realized, wow, these drones that Russia has been using for a long time now are an actual problem, and they actually deal a lot of damage. For anyone that has been following the Russian invasion into Ukraine, it was incredible seeing footage, for example, from United States having bases full of vehicles and equipment that's just stashed together in one single pile or next to each other, that is completely unprotected from any kind of aerial assault, like we're living in good old 1980s or something like this, where there is no ability for Iranians to strike it. Also, the unprotected skies from Iranian Shahed-type drones. It was incredible, and I felt like big frustration seeing a lot of this, that now we're seeing United States and Gulf states reaching out to Ukraine to please supply the interceptor drones so they can fight the Shaheds, not with ultra expensive missiles, but with something that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And I think this underscores two very important points. Point number one is that our military is rotten to the core. I'm talking about NATO and the Western Alliance. This is my long-standing frustration. I've interacted a lot with different generals, different people working in procurement, and generally the structure and approach in our militaries. We've been doing it trying to see if we can get the sort of a more dronification of these militaries to be accepted. And unfortunately, our efforts have been pretty much in vain, as we discovered just now, that suddenly having all of these Shahed-type drones flying is a big surprise for the allies, that they are actually over there, and they need to call for Ukraine, the country literally being assaulted by a nuclear power, to come to our aid. And I mean, we already had precedent with this, with the drones flying into Europe, yet nothing really changed. We didn't really have major realignment of our visions. So one thing you need to understand about the military, I know there is a lot of people that are looking at the military with big reverence. Me, after interacting, I don't have that reverence sort of anymore. I have respect for people that are actually doing their job at their positions, but there is also a lot of people that are just in their higher up positions, and you talk with them and they're just big old boys that just wants to play with some kind of nice expensive looking toys, and that's about it. And I was very frustrated that there was this short-sightedness, that everyone was just looking at these Ukrainian drones and everyone's just assuming, well, that's it, like, you know, Russia and Ukraine, they're fighting their war, but no one else is going to fight the war like this, so we don't need to adapt to any technologies that they're having. Because look at our technologies, they're so much more advanced. Even despite you're trying to explain that these calculations just don't align, that yes, European Union, for example, can beat Russia on any day of the week, while it's the first week and it's not the second one. And this is the big kind of problem that we have been seeing before. And on one side, I'm very happy that it has finally been exposed. And I'm really happy that Ukraine is now being shown to be really capable in this modern era of warfare, where we're getting to the point number 2, that Ukraine, with their technologies and investments in Ukraine, we're now getting a big push towards general militarization and more investments into Ukraine. I explained many times that capitalism, and why I believe in capitalism, is that it's what's going to drive Ukraine to the victory. Because look what's going to happen now. Just think about this. Now suddenly they see the technologies that Ukraine is developing are useful. Not in theoretical sense, like for some wars sometimes maybe, but now it's actually going to be to save their own asses, because they didn't have anything that can fight the types of weapons are used by Iranians or anyone else. So now they're looking for Ukraine to actually guide them. And this will drive additional investments, this will drive additional funds, and more development of Ukrainian military sector. So when we were talking about can Ukraine really win this war, and I stated that as soon as Ukraine is going to start having developments, they're going to have investments, and going to have products that will be competitive and going to define and drive the market, at that time Ukraine will start getting so much influx of money that it's just going to be a matter of time for it actually get all of the funds necessary to literally crush Russia. And I think this is pretty much finally the beginning of it. And a lot of you have been asking what I think about the invasion into Iran. And first and foremost, this is a channel that's called Ukraine Matters. I am focused on Ukraine because Ukrainian situation is critical for us, democracy and the world, and how the world would be defined going forward. But more importantly, there was some people that were so delusional that they thought I will be against taking out the leaders of Iran and destabilizing the regime. I don't know in which world those people live, but Iran is not our friend. The regime in Iran is not our friends. And the fact that like there are some people that are trying to protect and just say like, well, Trump bad, therefore Iran good, like, what are you smoking? Like, because Iranians have been helping to kill Europeans non-stop, and they have been literally bankrolling a lot of the Russian drone sector. So no, I have zero pity for the Iranian mullah regime. That said, what I am against is I am against incompetence, because my problem with this invasion into Iran is that it is half-assed, that seemingly there was an expectation somehow that if they will just take out the head of the state, then suddenly everything will just fall in places. There will be like people running out in the streets and just taking their weapons. And again, I'm not going to be going in depth, but this is not what we're happening. Iran is not like a single person dictatorship. There is a whole theocratic regime there that has a lot of people underneath it. Now, the operation is still ongoing, so I'm not putting any final judgment. My problem is that we've seen this before. And if this is not dealt properly with, which seems that this is the case, because so far nothing indicated that there's literally any kind of afterthought or plan B about this operation whatsoever. If this is literally the plan, then what we're going to have in 20, 30 years, we're going to have generations of Iranians that are radicalized, not by the regime that was just saying West is bad and so on, while we were trying to make some kind of deals. Now it's going to be literally radicalized folks, and we're going to end up having the same situation that we had with except it's now going to be named something else. And looping it back into the Russian situation, well, Russia is actually providing Iran with intelligence so Iran can strike US targets. How about that? Because recently Donald Trump came out again and stated that Putin is already ready for a deal and it's only Zelensky that's standing in the way. While on the other hand, United States is begging Ukraine for their drone technology just so they can fight on. And you know what's the craziest thing is? That after all of that, the biggest collapse is the oil prices, which is undoubtedly is beneficial to Russia. Russia right now is celebrating and popping so much champagne, and it's definitely going to help Russia. Let's not kid ourselves. This is very beneficial to Russia, intensely so. More than that, Trump's administration is looking at this and it's like, well, shit, the oil prices are going really up. How can we patch it up? I know. Let's get Russian oil to be now sold to India. Trump supporters on this channel, this is your administration that is saying, go buy Russian oil, give Russia money. Okay? Okay, moving on. Ukraine is preparing for the first down payment for the Gripens and Rafale fighter jets to come into Ukraine. This is great because these new jets are fantastic. They're able to use some of the most modern NATO technology, which while for the ground operations and drone operations is one thing, but having the Air Force that is capable and is able to use cutting-edge technologies is definitely up there that Ukraine needs. And if Ukraine is going to be able to secure more sky dominance, it's going to open a lot of doors for Ukrainians at the front line. Then talking about Russian propaganda, you know, like Russians, they want to gaslight you that supposedly in Russia people don't know what is happening, or they don't want to really recognize that they're supporting the war, that they were just like, you know, all these poor little victims. So there has been like a number of advertisements for the Alabuga, where they're trying to get students to come in and assemble Shahed drones. And a lot of people try to gaslight all of us, telling that, you know, they're trying to get these students just to come for a job and so on. But that's not the case. And I'm glad that they made these advertisements, because this is kind of shows to everyone. I'm not going to put any sounds because it's in Russian. But the point of the matter is what is shown on this video. Because on this video, they are showing what the students will be doing. It is a Shahed factory. It is literally showing Russians and students and youngsters assembling drones to kill Ukrainians. So all of those that are trying to tell you that ordinary Russians don't support the war, they don't know what is happening. Bullshit. And to finish it off on a great note, Ukrainians have been exchanged. There has been massive exchange of prisoners of war between Russians and Ukrainians. Right now, there have been reports about 300 people being exchanged. There are rumors that there will be 200 more, hopefully. And this is always great news to see defenders of Ukraine that have been captured by Russia coming back in one piece, even if they have been scarred for life by this terrorist regime. In any case, let's continue supporting Ukraine. Thank you so much for everyone that is participating in fundraiser. As you can see, we're already more than halfway. We really stepped up the last time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it so much for everyone that is doing so for Ukraine. So support Ukraine, trust in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.